Elden Ring took over the gaming world in February this year. Grandiose, mysterious, and a touch more welcoming than its predecessors, it tweaked the FromSoft formula to open up its world, inviting in Souls veterans and new fans to the fold. It's one of those truly special titles that feels like something new in a very familiar space. Now though, after all those months roaming the lands between after release, it's definitely time to turn elsewhere. Maybe you've finally become the Elden Lord and are looking for the next challenge, or so deep into New Game Plus that you're worried you'll never play anything else and need something to make you surface. Maybe you finally bounced off the game after trying one too many times and finding that it just isn't for you, or you've slogged your way through it with the help of our handy-dandy guide series courtesy of the incredible Aoife Wilson. Either way, I've got a bumper list of games that will help fill the Elden Ring-shaped hole in your heart. Hang on, this is a lot easier than I was thinking it would be. Just go and play any of the other FromSoft SOULSBORNE games. Yeah, I guess that will do it for the video. There are loads of them. Off you go. No, come on Zoe, you're better than that, allegedly. Obviously, if you enjoyed Elden Ring, it's worth looking at the other Souls games, all of which are more linear, but still incredibly well crafted and hold up amazingly well. However, I, Zoe Delahunty-Light, am here to give this a little bit more thought, with a list of 11 games that evoke the feeling of Elden Ring without having Souls or Born in the title. Okay, hear me out. Maybe this is the most obvious non-FromSoft suggestion, but that doesn't mean it's without merit. On Elden Ring's release, it was compared to Nintendo's masterpiece constantly, and for good reason. Breath of the Wild is enormous, designed for exploration and full of mysteries, however, is also somehow serene, charming, and bright. The weather, stealth, cooking, and a fabulously fun and realistic physics simulation are just a few of the many powerful and intricately linked systems that support the entire game. Gear, specifically for defense, and weapons for attack strength, controls Link's entire progression. You won't want to waste a fantastic temporary weapon's short life on weak foes, but it's usually a good idea to keep one or two inferior weapons on hand. As a result, you're constantly adapting your potential strength to each scenario, and with each fight becoming a thoughtful set piece where you puzzle out which of your tools you can afford to use, and therefore lose. All of this results in an excellent sandbox game design that's devoid of fuss and bloat, free of assumptions, and carried out with the kind of rock-solid dependability, tactile feedback, and joy that you'd expect from a mainline Nintendo game. Breath of the Wild has some of Elden Ring's more punishing moments within it as well, but it is ultimately a more flexible experience, allowing you to simply turn away from the fight and go play with some physics puzzles, or simply head to a more serene area and enjoy exploration in relative peace and safety. And it's that which makes playing Breath of the Wild the ideal follow-up to Elden Ring. Don't let Hollow Knight's cutesy art style fool you. Underneath that cartoony veneer is an excellent Metroidvania with light horror elements, punishing gameplay, zero handholding, and a high price on failure. Combat is straightforward but challenging. Your battles become gradually more complex as you move through Hallownest's various areas, equipped with a directional nail, basically a sword, that can be buffed and improved by a variety of charms and magic spells. The only way to recover is to either consume the souls you gather, or take a little break on one of the elaborate seats scattered throughout the realm. This is what gives Hollow Knight its Souls-like reputation, and while it may seem simple at first, you'll find it more and more difficult to hide out and rest, especially during a boss encounter. And it won't take much to knock you down permanently because you rarely get a second chance, and dying wipes out all of your hard-earned geo, the game's currency, until you locate and vanquish your own ghostly remains. Buried deep within this insect-infested land, each playthrough of Hollow Knight feels and moves a little bit differently. There are no waypoints or story missions, there's not even a right or a wrong way to play, really. Developer Team Cherry doesn't care where you go or how you get there. Even how much of the story you see is up to you. While it's much simpler and shorter than Elden Ring, Hollow Knight is a great little adventure that won't feel like whiplash after the punishing lands between. Ghost of Tsushima's open-world samurai adventure has a much more comprehensive story than Elden Ring, and is arguably easier, but it still has a lot of elements that make Elden Ring incredible. Ghost of Tsushima features tight, technical sword combat, a large, interesting world, and distinctive, varied side quests. This historical action game recounts the story of Jin Sakai, a fictional samurai tasked with almost single-handedly fending off a Mongol invasion of the feudal Japanese island he calls home. In doing so, you're forced to evolve from stoic and honourable samurai to the Ghost, a master of underhand tactics. And therein lies your central conflict. Jin has to defend the people of the island, but he does so at great cost, abandoning tradition, honour, and everything that comes with it. The combat in Tsushima, which is a sort of cross between Sekiro and Arkham, is where it really excels. To truly get in there with your katana's pointy end and deal some damage, you'll need to break the guard and health meters that each enemy has. As is the Arkham style, you can dodge and perfect dodge, dodge roll, parry, and perfect parry, and much of your success will come from successfully countering your enemy's attacks. In order to efficiently clash swords, break shields, charge archers, parry spears, and slash brutes, you'll need to quickly transition between stances as often as every enemy attack. This is where the game is most satisfying. Ghost of Tsushima feels spectacular and most true to the films it draws its inspiration from in these personal moments of brutality, with the music soaring, the adversaries retreating and crumpling, and Jin, dressed in some imperial armour, drenched in dirt and pelted with rain. If that tableau isn't enough for you to want to give Ghost of Tsushima a go, then I give up. I'm cheating a little bit here with both the original Nioh and its sequel as suggestions, but there's no one here to stop me, so what are you gonna do? Nioh tells a highly embellished tale of the Western samurai William Adams, a real-life historical figure who arrived on Japanese shores in 1600. The sequel takes a similar approach, with you enacting the secret history of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the real-life daimyo created with unifying a war-torn Japan, who, in this retelling, was actually two people. Of course, neither probably had to do battle with a full bestiary of demons and fell spirits. The levels are a little bit more directed, but there are still plenty of secrets to find if you're willing to go off the beaten path. On the surface, the Dark Souls influence is obvious, with its slowly recharging stamina meter determining your actions, and a respawn mechanic offering one chance to reclaim your lost XP where you last fell. Yet, it's to Ninja Gaiden that the game owes its elaborate melee combat system, with dozens upon dozens of weapon-specific combos backed up by ninja tools such as the Poison Shuriken, Onmyo spells such as Fireballs or Lifesteal, and the nuclear options conferred by your character's guardian spirit. Each weapon can be wielded in 3 stances with diverging movesets. High stance trades speed for power, low stance power for speed, and the middle is in the middle. Duh. The levels are a little bit more directed than Elden Ring's interlocking Eldritch conundrum, but there are still plenty of secrets to find if you're willing to go off the beaten path. A series of fiendish puzzle boxes, engrossing and oppressive. Pinhead would be proud. Dark fantasy setting? Check. Grotesque creatures? Check. A fractured world that can be traversed on horseback, on foot, and is begging you to unveil its mysteries? Double check. Elden Ring may be the current holder of the award for open world game where you actually want to do everything in the world, but look back at the past winners' plaques and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is bound to be there for 2015. It's an incredible game with a huge amount of detail in its worlds and so much to do, and its DLCs are arguably better than the main game itself. You play as Geralt of Rivia, a roving monster hunter caught up in a war, an interdimensional hunt, and a love triangle all at the same time. Instead of one seamless world, you'll travel through 4 vast areas, each with its own unique landscape, a slew of side missions, and an exciting quest to advance the main story. The combat sees you carefully studying up on monsters and preparing the best way to take them down, with magic sprinkled in amongst the swordplay. The Witcher 3 and Elden Ring are similar in tone too, and your choices can have a big influence on the story. You are often faced with morally grey characters that will have you questioning whether you made the right decision long after you've moved on to the next village. With a number of re-releases rivaling that of Doom, if you've got something that can play games, and we can assume you do, given you've played Elden Ring, there will definitely be a version of Skyrim for your system of choice. The mechanics of Elden Ring and Skyrim may not be very comparable, but both games heavily rely on exploring. Elden Ring excites, or terrifies, you when you venture off in a new direction and encounter a new catacomb, settlement, or monstrous boss. Skyrim effectively perfected this loop 10 years earlier. As you explore Bethesda's vast, frozen realm, you'll uncover seemingly endless numbers of random dungeons and encounters. While Skyrim is more open book with its world building than Elden Ring, it still encourages you to explore for greater insight, revealing its inner workings and lore through side missions, and hiding decisions that will shape the future of the kingdom far off of the beaten track. Despite its age, the game is still considered to be the benchmark that all other open-world RPGs are compared to. Skyrim walked so that many other games on this list could run, and without it, there's a good chance that Elden Ring would never have existed. So, on the off chance that it somehow slipped you by, or if it's just been a long time since you last explored Tamriel's Northern Kingdom, it's well worth taking up the mantle of the Dragonborn. Tunic is one of those incredible gems of a game that makes it very hard to talk about exactly why it's so incredible. I know that might not make sense, but I'm going to give it a go. Almost everything we could tell you about it could run the risk of ruining the experience that makes it so stellar, stepping dangerously into spoiler territory. Don't worry though, I'll tread lightly. It's a game about mystery, about narration, about magic, twists, turns, and unexpected events, community, and, of course, the most adorable little fox ever rendered in pixels. Awakening on an island beach at the start of the game, your tunic-clad fox is given 0 instructions. It's up to you to explore, because that's the only option you have available to you. As you discover more about the world around you, the more questions are raised, and the more you find yourself wanting to explore, Tunic well and truly having its hooks in you. Like Elden Ring, Tunic doesn't hold your hand, and this can lead to scenarios that feel punishingly difficult at times. As you explore the island's labyrinthian ruins, you'll find yourself solving riddles and environmental puzzles, and battling vicious monsters to make progress. Through this, Tunic captures some of Elden Ring's freedom, complexity, and opaqueness, but in a smaller package that won't feel as overwhelming to new players. Its cute, colourful, and bright world is in stark contrast to that of the lands between, but the inspiration it draws from FromSoftware's games is hard to ignore, making for a wonderfully sweet palate cleanser after Elden Ring that touches on many of the same ideas. Tunic is definitely one of Ian's games of the year so far, and with it now hitting Switch and PlayStation, in addition to PC and Xbox, Tunic is definitely one you should take a look at. I absolutely love Death's Door. Death's Door sees you as a crow who is employed as a reaper with a load of other, more bureaucratic crows in a kind of civil service of the afterlife. Your regular job is to go out and gather the souls of the dead, and when someone's found a way to cheat death, extending their life way beyond its natural length, you've got to whack them with your sword first. Death's Door is pleasantly challenging, occasionally a little demanding mechanically, but always doable and never cruel. Your main task is to defeat 3 main bosses, each deep within their own world accessed from the main hub. Each one unlocks a new skill beyond your sword for combat, but which also can be used to unlock new paths and new parts of the world. The bosses themselves are a treat. Able to build on the brilliantly inventive fights from developer Acid Nerve's previous game Titan Souls by adding more layers, more rounds of progression, and often utilising and manipulating the environment in ways that force you to adapt to the challenge. The flip side of this is the environment, which is littered with secrets. Hidden tunnels, disguised ladders, teasing, unreachable levers, gaps in hedges, and curiously destructible-looking walls are everywhere. Tying traversal to abilities means it's always snappy, and the beautiful sadness of the world means it's always mysterious, always enticing, and never a chore. The result is a wonderfully beautiful Zelda Souls-like about the immutable beat of time, the rhythm of life and death. And also, you're a cute crow with a massive sword. What's not to like? I adore 2018's God of War. I even have a tattoo about it, and I've made a 3-part series breaking down its story. It's personal and heart-wrenching, a hugely welcome departure, in my opinion, from the series' roots. Kratos and his son Atreus' relationship offers a slow and complicated story of growth and acceptance, all wrapped up in the gorgeous world of Norse mythology. At times, the world here is breathtaking, with drastically different environments to explore, each with its own secrets to discover. Of course, it is a much more linear affair than Elden Ring, as despite the open world, you will find yourself mostly following the path of the story as you play. But once you've gotten deep into Midgard, there are dragons to free and Valkyries to take down. God of War's combat is gritty, vicious, and such a joy too. Such a sometimes tactical, technical as you want it to be, shamefully violent, blood-rushing pleasure. You can parry and dodge with precision, or you can knock down the difficulty to the point where neither is required. Atreus is no mere child to be escorted either, thankfully. He helps in combat, firing out arrows when ordered, looking after himself, and both of you looking after each other. Once you've worked your way through the main content, exploring the world to seek out all of its secrets, its punishing post-game and roguelike sections are the most comparable to the challenge of Elden Ring, one that you've built by honing your skills through Kratos and Atreus' story, rather than being dropped in it from the get-go. It truly is a mind-blowing game that everyone who can should play. And, of course, with Ragnarok on the horizon, it's the perfect time to dive into this masterpiece, even if it means I have to peer pressure you to do so. Mortal Shell has the same sort of vibes that you might remember from the Dark Souls games, with gloomy scenery and weird, creepy lore. However, the combat is very different, which actually caused a lot of hardcore Dark Souls fans to bounce off it. But our very own Ian Higton was a fan, even introducing Aoife to it in late to the party. The big difference in combat, however, comes from the ability to harden yourself at any time. Insert childish joke here, Ian isn't here so I can just pass by that. Freezing yourself in place and preventing harm from attacks. Though, like most hard things, don't laugh, it breaks quickly upon taking damage. Whilst this initially sounds like a simple block, bread and butter to most Souls fans, it very quickly becomes clear that this small addition gives Mortal Shell's combat much more strategic depth, resulting in slower-paced slugfests between yourself and the brutally tough enemies and humongous bosses that roam the land. Getting past and defeating these creatures results in secrets, special items, and shortcuts, and, to my delight, heaps of lore to discover. Perhaps the biggest departure from the Souls series are the titular Mortal Shells themselves. Rather than creating your own unique character, players inhabit shells of fallen heroes that you slowly unlock throughout the game, each with their own weapons, stats, and movesets. Only about 10 to 12 hours long, roughly, and whilst some people can definitely beat Dark Souls faster than this, it's fair to say that Mortal Shell is a much shorter experience for the majority of players than any of the Souls series, and definitely one worth a look at. And there we have it, 11 incredible games to scratch that Elden Ring itch, which sounds like something Ian would call in sick about. Ugh. What about you? What will you, or have you, played since becoming Elden Lord? Or are you content to play Elden Ring in perpetuity, spiraling deeper and deeper into the new game until the inevitable sequel? Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and of course, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you lot next time.